Okay, welcome to part 2 of my Learning How to Facet series. Today I'm going to do a little bit of preforming, and from what I've learned, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can do it freehand, or you can use your faceting machine. If you have a cabbing unit like this genie over here, you can use something like that to cut your stone freehand with. If you don't, then you can use your faceting lap, your roughest grit, probably around 100 to 200, depending on how big the pieces you're working with. Go from there. The first step is going to be to decide which end is going to be the top. And one way to do this is to cut a window right in the stone. If you have a piece of rough like this, it can be really difficult to tell what's going on inside the stone. So you can do what's called cutting a window into the stone. So that's what I'm going to do first. And the easiest way to cut a window into a stone is to use a flat faceting lap, because that will actually give you your crown facet, which is be the top facet on the stone, perfectly flat. So that's what we're going to do. All right, start out with unscrew this. The threads on these things are reversed so that they don't loosen over time. I'm going to put on a rough disc here on top of my master lap. Tighten this back down. Now, I don't need the faceting arm, and I don't need to do any dopping at this time because I'm going to do this all freehand. I'm still waiting for my water supply to come in. So for now, I have a low-tech version, which is an old bucket here, just an old bucket from some construction screws, and a sponge. And the sponge will give me plenty of water here. So I apologize for the noise, but this is a really old motor and pulley system, so it's going to create a bit of a racket. We'll turn that on. At this piece here, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think I want this to be the top. So I'm going to start flattening that out, and we'll see what we get. It's important to keep the stone moving so that you wear the laps evenly. Okay, so first thing I've realized, that's taking forever because I have a lot of material to grind off. After about a minute of grinding here, I haven't made much progress, so I'm going to move over to the cabbing machine and use the coarse grit on that thing, because that removes material very quickly, and I'll get that to where it's mostly flat, and then come back over here and do that last window cut here on the cabbing machine, on the lap. All right, back from the cabbing machine here. You can see here I've got it quite flat now, so I'm going to go back to the lap wheel. So what I'm looking at is for a totally flat frosted surface where I don't see any of the large scratches left over from the coarser grits. The larger a facet is, the longer it takes to get a good polish on it. It can take a long time to get good polish on a big stone. rinse this off here in the water. So you're starting to get a nice smooth surface on it. Now here's the thing, I don't know if you can tell or not, but I can now, when the stone is wet, look right into the stone and I can see which of these cracks on the outside reach deep into the stone and which do not. So now I can really start to decide how I want to shape this, if it's going to make a round or if it's going to make a rectangle. Luckily this is a very clean piece and there's not really a lot that's happening on the inside. So now I'm going to take it back over to the cavity machine and start cutting it into the approximate shape, removing a lot more material that so I can get the shape I want. Okay, so I'm partway through grinding and I'm starting to kind of rough out a square shape here. I need to reduce the size a little bit more so that this corner is not a problem. Either that or I'll need to cut an octagon. One thing that's very difficult is to freehand perfect 90-degree angles. So later, when I put this on the faceting machine, I'll have to true up all the angles. When you do a preform, it's important to make the edges of the pavilion rounded because you're going to be removing material. If you make them too shallow, you won't have any material to remove later. You need to make sure that I also cut out any and all of these small imperfections in the stone because they'll show up in the final piece and may expand out into larger problems later down the road if I don't remove them now. Okay, so here's my preform now. I need to check and see just how well I got these angles here because I know that they're not going to be perfectly 90 degrees, but I'll fix that over there on the faceting machine. That'll be done after I dop the stone. Then I can start cutting the girdle edges. And the girdle facets will be the first thing I cut, and that'll true the stone up to a perfect square. And also we'll need to work on the overall depth. This would be too deep of a cut, but I can remove more material later. But this should work out to about a 15 millimeter square smoky quartz when it's done. So it'll be a pretty nice size. All right, so now that I've roughed out the preform as close as I can get as a human on the cavity machine, I'm going to check and see how close I got. In order to do this, I'm going to use a digital protractor here. So you can see here, it's going to, I don't know if the angle is going to be reversed. I can do that later, fix that, but set that here. And it looks like, so I'm at 89.2, 89.5. That's really good on that angle. This one's about 89.4. So just doing it by eye, I actually got pretty close. This one's a little off. This one, I'm at 92 degrees. This one at 90. So obviously if you add up all 4 corners, they should equal 360. So I'm a little under on 2 of them and a little over on 2 of them. But I'm within a degree or 2, and since these facets, the girdle facets, are very long and narrow, they'll cut very quickly. And you want to proportion a stone so that the girdle is going to be about 2/3 from the bottom and 1/3 from the top. So I do have a little bit extra material that I can remove from this, but being quartz, cutting it extra deep will give me better color saturation. So I might just go that route. As I turn the stone here, I'm looking for any problems that I see. I can see there's some little edge chips here, which later will probably polish out, right, if I facet it right. And I just need to get all the edges to line up. So that'll be what I do next. The next thing I want to do is to get a digital caliper here and see how square it is. Right now we're at 18.46 by 18.63, so that's 0.2 millimeters off by eye. So that alone would be close enough to have a finished stone and call it good. So I'm quite happy with that. Once I get the girdles though, this will get a little bit smaller as I get all of the girdles to line up around the edges. So I'm going to do a little bit more work on that and see if I can get it looking a little bit better. Okay, I did just a little bit more touch-up work on the cabbing machine here, and now I have girdle facets that line up all the way around. And that's really what I was looking for. I wanted the stone where I wasn't going to lose a lot of material as I cut, and I wanted to know how big it was going to be. At this point, I don't see any surface flaws that I have to worry about. And as I look through the stone, if I can hold up to the light, I can look through it and I'm not seeing anything in the side of the stone. So I should get eye clean stone when I'm all done. That's somewhere in the range of about 18 millimeters. And I decided to go with a square because it's a simple cut to do, and I can do it on a 64 tooth index wheel. And the other nice thing about a square is if you chip a corner, you can turn it into an octagon just by adding facets around each corner, which as a beginner is highly likely. So next what I'm going to do is set that aside, and I'm going to do the same process on this piece of rose quartz here. I found this in the drawer of the faceting machine. It had previously been dopped but had fallen off. So I'm going to do a little freehand work on it and see what I can come up with it. Okay, so just like I did with the smoky quartz, I'm going to take this rose quartz here. I've established that this is going to be the top of the stone, which is probably what the other person before me decided this was the pavilion, and they adopt the pavilion. So I'm going to go ahead and start roughing out this top part and see what I see inside the stone. Now, the stone here, it would really like to be an oval, but as I'm a beginning cutter, I think I'll do a round. Ovals require you to do angle splitting with the angle splitting setting on your faceting machine, and since I would rather just avoid that hassle now for my first few cuts, I'm going to cut this into a round shape. So I'm going to try to freehand a round as best I can to start with. Since on the back side this part is thickest part, I'm going to cut off more from this side to move the stone more in that direction. Essentially what I'm trying to do now is to cut a cylinder out. So one of the most discouraging things that can happen in preforming is you think you've got a good size, and then you look at the sides here and you realize that there's basically problems with the stone, and you have to cut all that out. But by the time I cut out that on that side, that on that side, I'm going to have significantly reduced the size of my stone. An experienced cutter will work around these to make the stone using a more interesting cut, or a weight saving cut, or a size saving cut. And once I figured out how to cut better, then I'll start doing that more often. But for now, since I'm just getting started, I figure keep it simple. So now I've got those two spots up there on each side, on here and here, ground out. Got a bit of an oval, so now I'm going to try to get it a little more rounder. I've also started to cut the pavilion into a bit of a cone, but I'm being pretty conservative with how much material I remove, because I want to cut that into facets later, of course. I will say that if you have experience having done cabs before, it is helpful, because you already have a feel for how to hold the stone and how to cut into a different shape freehand. And that'll help you with the preforming stage quite a bit, because preforming by hand on this grinding wheel is way faster than trying to preform on a faceting machine. So I do recommend it. Some cutters will leave their stones in preform in the pure cylinder shape. I am trying to go ahead and take out some of the crown and some of the pavilion to make cutting later down the road go faster. The more material I can remove here without making a mistake, the faster the faceting will go. Okay, just about done. There's one little pocket in here that I need to grind out, because I don't want that to interfere later with my facets. So for now, I'm going to call it good. We have our two preforms, a square and a round, and two different types of quartz, which is handy because then I can use the same grinding and polishing wheels for both of these. And hopefully by the time I get started, my water dip system will be in. I did order some dop wax. This is the dop wax I ordered. It melts at 150 degrees Fahrenheit. This is pretty standard green dop wax. It's used in faceting, and we'll cover dopping in the next video. So for now, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying this and learning as I do. So until next time, see you later.